guys hear me? Good? All right, I'm going to start with a quick question. How many people here right now knows what they want to do with their life? Awesome. How many people here have no idea what you want to do with your life? Yeah. That's surprising at this school, but when I was in high school, that's exactly where I was at. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. All I knew was, I had two passions. One was adventure. I loved adventure. At least I read about it. And the other thing was, I absolutely loved anything to do with psychology, persuasion, communication, and anything that has to do with things like neuro-linguistic programming or talking to people and converting the way they think and feel. And that's only important because I never actually got a chance to really use that skill until the day that I was mistaken to be a terrorist and almost got shot by the Indian military. So today I'm just going to share with you guys that story. I was around 18 at the time. I had just gotten out of high school. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was talking to a friend who was really good at school and had a lot of ideas, a lot of future. And he asked me what I was doing for the summer. I didn't have any better answers at the time, so I just went, I'm going to India. I had no preparation to go to India, but it seemed like it's something cool to say. But as it turned out, I now had to go to India. So later on that week, I bought a ticket to go to India, having no preparations done whatsoever. And a month later, I arrived in New Delhi. All I had was a Lonely Planet book, which is this thick. By the time that I didn't even have Wikipedia to rely on. And the other thing that I really had was my backpack. And I started walking around New Delhi trying to engage and learn more about this whole city. And I run into a con man. At the time, I didn't know he was a con man. He was just a really nice guy. He spoke a perfect British accent. And he invited me to his place for tea, and I was like, people here are super nice. So of course I go to his house, and the first thing he does is he's like, boy, give me some chai. He's not talking to me, he's talking to like somebody who works for him. And I'm like, this is great. Because back in Vancouver, I don't have anybody giving me tea. And he says, well, hey, if you like this kind of service, you will love going to northern India. My parents have a hotel. It's amazing. They have people who get you anything you want. You'll go and see all these really remote places, like villages that nobody else has ever seen before, and you'll love it. It'll be an adventure. And I was like, adventure? Yeah, I'm on. Well, as it turns out, I need a little backstory for this, because back in the early 2000s, there was a little area up in the northern part of India called Kashmir. And Kashmir was in the middle of war, basically, between India and Pakistan. The two of them were fighting. And not only that, but the US Department of Defense in 2002 decided that that was probably where Al-Qaeda had a base in. And in fact, Osama bin Laden wrote a letter to the American people saying, one of the reasons he attacked America was because India was holding on to Kashmir. Guess where I was going today? Yeah, I was going to Kashmir. And of course, I got on the flight, and it was the most empty, quiet flight I've ever been on. It was amazing, actually, because nobody wanted to go to Kashmir in the middle of wartime. But I didn't know that. I just thought, hey, I'm going to go on an adventure. It's going to be awesome. Like 5 people on the flight. There was like the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight attendant, and me, and this one other guy. And it was great. I arrived there was no cars. And I remember my friend had gave me, my friend as in the con guy, but I didn't know that at the time. And my friend had given me this instruction. He says, you need to take a car, go to this bus station, and then take a bus, which will take you to my parents' place. And I thought, that should be easy enough. And I find a car, and I, tap on him, and he's just like, yeah, let's go. I give him the address for the bus place, and he's like, yeah, it's fine. He doesn't speak a word of English, by the way. Up until this point, most people that I had met in northern India did not speak any English. But we drive on, and well, I'm guessing maybe an hour into the drive, the car stops. And he says something to me very urgently, and he just bolts out of the car, and I have no idea what's going on. I'm just like, okay, cool, that's fine. And now keep in mind at this point, the car is putting up exhaust and everything's, it kind of has that, like funky smell thing. So I had a little bandana that I was wearing against my face. Really smart idea. You had a picture of me, I am dirty. I am scuffed up. My face is dirty. I shaved my head. I had long hair in high school. You can't imagine it now, but I had long hair in high school. I shaved it all off to go on this trip. And I started reading my thick, Bible-sized Lonely Planet guide. And I started muttering to myself. And out of nowhere, I suddenly hear this tap like and I look over, and I see a guy in full military uniform pointing an AK-47 at my face. I freeze. I have no idea what's going on. I am panicking, but I can't think. My brain just stopped. And I started looking over, and I realized it wasn't just one. I was being surrounded by 5, 6, 7 guys who were all pointing their guns at me. And I go, what am I going to do? So I thought in my brain, that wasn't working very well at the time. Well, it's simple. I'm a Canadian. That's got to mean something, right? Well, I got my passport in my pocket. I'm just going to reach in and grab it and show it to them, and I'm sure they'll love that. So I reach in, and the guy starts screaming at me, going, "Ah!" And I have no idea what he means, but I'm guessing it wasn't, "You got very nice hair." So I'm just going, okay, all right, stop. And the guy rips open the door. He grabs me, throws me down on the floor, pins my arm back, picks me up, and marches me into a room. Throws me down in a chair. And at this point, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm sitting there, my mind is blank, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die here. And that's when I realized, well, this is a very good reason why you should not like your parents, by the way. That's when I realized nobody knows that I'm up in Cashmere right now. I told my parents that I was going on a volunteering trip with a bunch of my friends, and that was the only reason they let me go. That's not a good thing. So nobody knows who I am, except for a con man that I don't think knows who I am actually in New Delhi. And I suddenly realized that I got to talk my way out of this one. So I started going back to my memory, and I started going through every single book I ever read about psychology and persuasion. I started flipping through everything, and I'm going, I got to talk my way out of this one somehow. And anyway, about half an hour later, this very angry but very well-spoken commander comes in with, again, perfect English. And he sits down, and he asks me these questions that I didn't know how to answer. It was questions like, what organization do you belong to? What was your plan? And I was just like, I'm just a kid. I have a plan. I'm just trying to travel. I want to go on an adventure. So I started going through every possible technique I've ever learned. I'm doing things like pacing and leading in neurolinguistic programming. I'm throwing compliments at him. I'm trying to lead his reality. And I started throwing joke after joke at him. That's the only thing I could think of. And at first he goes from angry to suspicious and then confused. And then finally he starts cracking up. And he's just like, you seem way too confident to be a bad guy right now. You don't seem to have any idea what's going on. And to be honest, I really didn't. So finally he just says, okay, stop. Why are you here? And I just go, well, I think I got scammed. And he cracks up. And I tell the story about how I met this guy in New Delhi and he set me up. And he's like, you know what? I think you were scammed too. But he was nice about it. And he said, look, what happened was your car stopped in front of a diplomat's house. And we've been getting notices that suicide bombers might be a legitimate concern. So when we see a guy who had a bandana over his mouth, was reading this book with a big backpacker's backpack in front of him, we naturally assume the worst. So you're not a terrorist, that's a good thing. Anyway, so he lets me go, and in fact, he was really nice about it, and he offers me coffee, he offers me tea, and he asked, do you guys want to, like, a proper military escort to get to your bus? And I was like, no, I'm okay. At that point, it sounded really cool, but at that point, I'm pretty sure that I'm down with guns and military in general. So we go, and we head off to the bus stop. Now, of course, at this point, I have missed the only bus that was going up. I had to wait until the next day for it. But when I was chatting with the guy, when I was buying the ticket, I was chatting with the guy, he looked at me and he said, you know, it's actually your lucky day, because the bus that had just already gone, that you should have been on, actually went off the road. And there was a few people who got hurt, and there was a few people who died. So that was the day I realized that being mistaken for a terrorist actually saved my life. From that experience, I learned 3 things, and it's actually pretty simple. The first thing is, don't travel to a war zone. This seems obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me at the time. I have, since that moment, I've been to about 45 other countries and almost 200 other cities. I travel around a lot. And that whole experience, fortunately, I have ran into only maybe a couple of more situations like that. Second thing is, don't fret about the things that worry you at the time. The things that seem most dangerous to you at the time, they won't end up being the things that save your life. And for me, for that moment, that certainly was. And the third thing is, learn some proper persuasion techniques. You have no idea how it's going to save you. So today I'm going to walk you guys through a couple of things that I learned before. And hopefully one day you'll be able to use it. Hopefully not to get out of becoming a terrorist or being mistaken for a terrorist, but something that can be used. So, The first one is how to build rapport with someone. This is very useful if you want to make a very quick friend or you want to build that relationship. You know, I have a lot of friends that I make, and a lot of times when I meet them, they start off with something like, I hear back from them this kind of response that like, you know, I don't know you for a very long time, but I feel like we've met for a very long time. I don't know why, and I'm always like, yeah, it must be fate, you know, we just bond on a very deep level. But in fact, I'm like, no, it's just one technique that I use. And that technique is called venue changing. It's a very effective technique. So when you meet a friend, I want you to try this. When you meet someone new for the first time, when you're talking to them, don't stay in one place. See, in our brain, we register memories based on locations. So try to take them to different places, even if it's something as simple as an auditorium or a school. Just be like, hey, listen, this is great, let's keep chatting, and start walking. And be like, I'm gonna grab something, I'm gonna grab a drink, and then grab a drink. And be like, this is great, I grabbed something like my locker, let's go to my locker. And then just take them 3 to 4 different places, and they will almost register each of those locations as a new experience with you. And then at the end of it, always try to take something, take a moment, take something that you remember from that conversation, and the next time you see them, talk about it again. So pick up where you left off. Don't let a conversation start all over again. Be like, hey, remember me? Yeah, this guy that you met last time. Yeah, that was great. You know, just keep going. It's like, remember that thing we were talking about? Well, I thought about it some more and this happened. So that's technique number 1. Technique number 2 is more important to be used to build up who you are, self-confidence. A lot of my students, I teach writing, I teach critical thinking, and to a certain degree I teach persuasion. I have a mentorship class, and one of the techniques that I always teach my students whenever they have issues with self-confidence is actually a very simple one. Anybody here run into a situation where like they have to go do something or talk to somebody, but along the way they kind of talk themselves out of it because they're not feeling very confident? Who here knows that feeling? Raise your hand right now. Okay, so a lot of you guys. Okay, so here is something that will immediately help. See, this is what happens. We get into a negative loop. We start thinking about something negative and we start beating ourselves up over it. We start going, I don't think you'll like me. I don't think you'll like this idea. It's probably not going to work out very well. Shut that down. Okay, shut that down. Don't think about it like that. So this is a technique. When you're walking towards something, let's say you're walking to your counselor's office or teacher's office or your friend's place or your parents' place or your boss's office, wherever that may be one day. As you're walking, imagine there's a single point of a laser beam pointing from your sternum, from your chest right here, forward. And I want you to walk in a straight line. Now this works particularly well in busy streets. Well, I'm not saying like, don't do this in like a senior home or a biker bar or anything like that, but this works very well in a hallway, this works very well in the street, and I just want you to walk, and walk straight. And never veer from this path. And if someone's walking towards you, they'll usually move out of the way for you. Or if they don't move out of the way for you, just slow down and let them change their path. Or just stop and let them change their path. And this is amazing because after a while, you start feeling like every step you take, you start feeling more confident. And while you're doing this, I want you to imagine every step you take, you are enlarging yourself by another foot until you're 15 feet tall. Now, I'm already a pretty tall guy, but when I imagine myself 12 feet tall, I feel way bigger. And then just walk like that. And keep your chin up, keep your nose up, and keep your eyes looking forward, and just keep walking. You have no idea how massive of an improvement that's going to be to your self-confidence. So, hopefully with those 2 techniques, you can walk away having known something and learned something. If you want to learn more, I recommend you going read up on it or learn up something that I wanted. You have no idea how it's going to help you one day. And make it easy for you to get to a university you want to get into, maybe easier for you to get a job you want to, or maybe one day it might even save your life. Thank you very much.